All right, so this week has been absolutely insane for Steam Machine coverage. Reviews dropped, benchmarks came out, Digital Foundry did their full breakdown, Gamers Nexus spent 3.5 hours on it, and basically every major tech outlet on the internet had something to say. And I have been reading and watching all of it because I wanted to come to you with the actual truth about this machine before you make any decisions. Because there is a lot of noise out there right now and I want to cut through it properly. So this video is going to cover everything. The price situation, the real performance numbers, what Digital Foundry actually found, how it compares to PS5, how it compares to a DIY build, what the GPU is actually doing, what FSR means for this machine, whether the $1,049 is actually reasonable or not, and what I genuinely think you should do if you are considering picking one up. All of it. Let's go. Before anything else, let me just make sure everyone is on the same page about what the Steam Machine actually is, because some people watching this might be coming to this fresh. The Steam Machine is a small cube-shaped gaming PC made by Valve. It is about 6 inches on each side. It plugs into your TV. It runs SteamOS, which is a Linux-based operating system that Valve built specifically for gaming. When you turn it on, it boots straight into the Steam Big Picture interface, and you play games with a controller from your couch. It is Valve's answer to the question of what happens if you take the Steam Deck experience and put it in your living room in a box that stays plugged in. The Steam Deck was a handheld. This is the living room version. Inside the box, Valve put a semi-custom AMD chip, 6-core Zen 4 CPU that boosts up to 8 GHz, a 28 compute unit RDNA 3 GPU with 8 GB of dedicated GDDR6 VRAM, 16 GB of DDR5 system RAM, and either 512 GB or 2 TB of NVMe storage depending on which model you go for. Everything is crammed into that small cube with a built-in power supply, which is part of why it is so impressive from an engineering standpoint. Now the pricing, $1,049 for the 512 GB model with no controller. If you want a controller, that goes to $1,228. The 2 TB version is $340 without a controller. With a controller, $1,328. In Australia, the base model sits around $1,609, and the top tier with controller hits $2,228. The UK pricing has the base at $879. These are real numbers. They are not a mistake. And yes, the reaction to these numbers has been intense. Now here is where I want to be completely honest with you, because I think a lot of the discourse online is either too defensive of Valve or too aggressive toward Valve, and neither is giving you the full picture. The price is high. I am not going to sit here and tell you it is not. For a machine with 28 compute units on an RDNA 3 GPU, in 2026, asking over $1,000 before you even have a controller in your hand is a significant ask. Gamers Nexus put it bluntly in their review when they said that paying this much money for effectively a 2019 R5 3600 level CPU computer in 2026 does not feel great. And they are right about that. The CPU performance in some of their benchmarks had the Steam Machine sitting around the level of a Ryzen 7 3700X or Ryzen 5 3600. That is a CPU from 2019. In 2026, for over $1,000, that needs to be said clearly. But here's the other side of that coin, and this is where context matters a lot. The reason the CPU is limited is not because Valve cheaped out on silicon. The reason is thermal and power budget. The entire machine runs at a TDP that keeps it quiet, cool, and fitting inside that tiny cube without needing an external power brick. Gamers Nexus actually measured this and found the system runs at roughly 170 to 180 watts during gaming in peaks in the low 200s under a full torture load. For a machine that small with a built-in PSU, that is actually an engineering achievement. The CPU is clocked conservatively to make that thermal envelope work. So when you see CPU performance numbers that look underwhelming, you need to understand why those numbers are what they are. It is not ignorance, it is a design choice. Now let us talk about the GPU, because that is what most people care about most, and this is where the performance truth gets really interesting. Digital Foundry and Gamers Nexus both independently found that in GPU-bound gaming scenarios, the Steam Machine performs closest to an RX 6600, an Intel B580, and an RTX 3060. Gamers Nexus specifically listed those three as the nearest comparisons in their benchmarks. The most immediate cards above the Steam Machine from modern GPU generations were the RX 7600 and the RTX 5050. What that tells you is that the GPU is roughly a mid-range 2020 to 2021 era discrete GPU in terms of raw output, not a 2026 flagship, not even close to a 2026 mid-range discrete GPU. A 2020 to 2021 level graphics card in a very small box with a thermal constraint on top. For some games, that is absolutely fine. Counter-Strike 2, in very high settings with FSR performance mode, is running in high triple-digit frame rates, even at 4K. That is not a problem. Esports titles, older games, less demanding titles, those run great on this thing. The Steam machine is genuinely capable for a huge portion of what most people actually play day to day. The problem comes when you throw modern AAA titles at it with high settings and expect 4K 60. That target falls apart quickly. 9 frames per second, even with FSR Ultra Performance Mode enabled. Native rendering at 4K Ultra on Hogwarts Legacy produces 2 frames per second. That is not playable. That is not even close to playable. Valve's own claim of 4K at 60 with FSR has been softened on their own product page from a flat promise to up to 4K, which is doing a lot of work as a caveat. Read that phrase as the ceiling, not the floor. The honest way to think about what the Steam machine targets is this. It does 1080p high settings extremely well in almost everything. It does 1440p medium to high settings well in most things. It does 4K with FSR upscaling from a lower render resolution in less demanding games and some mid-range games. It does not do native 4K in demanding modern titles. It does not do ray tracing in any meaningful way. Cyberpunk 2077 with ray tracing enabled visibly pushes the machine to its limit, and ray tracing is not a realistic target here, regardless of what mode you set it to. Digital Foundry's comparison against the PS5 was one of the most talked about parts of the coverage this week.
The New York Federal Reserve quietly injected $17 billion into
in Black Myth
bank.
Wukong in performance
No press
mode,
release,
the PS5
no
had a 3% lead
Just
over the Steam
$17 billion
machine.
of emergency
Crimson
cash
Desert, the
flowing into the
PS5
financial
achieved
system while you
17%
were
higher
opening
frame
presents.
rates. Forza
3
Horizon
days later,
5 at
on January
4K
1st,
showed a larger
2026,
gap where the Steam machine
something
had to
happened
drop
that
to
had never occurred in
1620p
modern
to
financial
approach
history.
the 60 frames per
In
second
Japan,
the PS5
physical
delivers
silver
natively
was
at
selling
4K.
for $130
And missing dynamic
per
resolution
ounce.
scaling on the Steam
In the
machine
United
was a
Arab
factor
Emirates,
there
the same
because
story,
consoles use
$130.
dynamic resolution
But here's where it
constantly
gets
to maintain
disturbing.
their performance
At that
targets
exact same
in ways that
moment,
are harder to
if you looked
replicate
at your trading
on a
screen
PC
in New
running
York or
games
London,
through Proton.
silver was showing
However, the Steam machine
$72
wins
per
in
ounce.
CPU
Let me
limited
repeat that
scenarios.
because it sounds impossible.
Digital Foundry tested
The
Baldur's
same
Gate
metal at the
3,
same time,
and the Steam
trading
machine's
at an
Zen
80%
4
premium in one part
CPU
of the world
shines in
versus another. This
CPU-stressed
isn't a
city
normal
and
market
dialogue-heavy
discrepancy.
areas.
This is
where
a confession that
PS5's
the entire
older
system is
CPU
breaking.
architecture struggles.
And at the center of
Bug
this
Hill in
chaos
Crimson
sits
Desert is
one
another
institution
example
that everyone
where the
knows,
Steam machine's
but nobody
CPU
truly
advantage
understands.
shows up clearly.
JP Morgan
These
Chase,
are real wins, but they are
America's
rare
largest
compared to
bank,
the frequency
and
of
they're sitting on the
GPU
largest
scenarios in modern
stockpile of
gaming.
physical silver
So
in
the
human
honest verdict
history.
on Steam machine
December
versus
26,
PS5 performance is
while
this.
most of America was
The
celebrating
PS5
Christmas
is
with their
faster in
families,
most
the New York
GPU-bound
Federal
scenarios
Reserve
at their
quietly
equivalent
injected
display
$17
targets.
billion
The Steam
into an
machine
unnamed
wins in
bank.
CPU-limited
No press
scenarios.
release, no
The
explanation.
PS5 has more memory
Just
bandwidth,
$17
which
billion
shows up in
of
texture-heavy
emergency cash flowing
situations.
into the financial system
The
while
Steam
you were
machine has
opening
dedicated
presents.
GDDR6
3 days later,
VRAM,
on January
which is a
1st,
meaningful architectural
2026,
advantage over the
something
shared
happened
memory
that
pool
had
on the
never
Steam
occurred
Deck.
in modern financial history. In Japan, physical silver was selling for $130 per ounce. In the United Arab Emirates, the same story, $130. But here's where it gets disturbing. At that exact same moment, if you looked at your trading screen in New York or London, silver was showing $72 per ounce. Let me repeat that because it sounds impossible. The same metal at the same time, trading at an 80% premium in one part of the world versus another. This isn't a normal market discrepancy. This is a confession that the entire system is breaking. And at the center of this chaos sits one institution that everyone knows, but nobody truly understands. JP Morgan Chase, America's largest bank, and they're sitting on the largest stockpile of physical silver in human history. On December 26, 2025, while most of
Right now
America
need
was
FSR
celebrating
performance
Christmas
mode
with
to
their
hit
families,
60,
the New York Federal
4K
Reserve
might hit it
quietly
with quality
injected
mode after
$17 billion
FSR4.
into an
One
unnamed
lands.
bank.
That is a real
No press
improvement to
release,
look forward to.
no explanation.
But right now,
just
at launch,
$17 billion
FSR4.
of emergency
One
cash
is
flowing
not
into
there
the
yet.
financial
You
system
are
while
working
you were
with
opening
FSR3.
presents.
3
days later,
noticeably
on
lower
January
quality,
1st,
especially at
2026,
performance and ultra
something
performance
happened
modes.
that had never
So
occurred
some
in
of
modern
the
financial
benchmark
history.
scenarios that look
In
rough right now
Japan,
should look better
physical
in a few
silver was
months.
selling for
Keep that in mind when reading
$130
reviews
per
that were
ounce.
done pre-FSR4.
In the United Arab Emirates, the same story,
including this one.
$130.
Let us talk about the
But here's where it gets
DIY question,
disturbing.
because this
At
is
that
what everyone is
exact same
asking.
moment, if
Can you
looked
build
at your
something
trading
better for the
screen
same
in
money?
New York or London,
Yes.
silver
You
was
can.
showing $72
Gamers
per
Nexus
ounce.
went through this
Let
in
me
detail.
repeat that because
For
it
around
sounds impossible.
$979,
The
you
same
can build
metal
a
at the
system
same
that beats
time,
the Steam
trading
machine
at
in
an
gaming
80%
performance.
premium in one
They
part of the
acknowledge
world
that
versus
at that
another.
price
This
point,
isn't
you're
a
using
normal
one of the
market
worst power
discrepancy.
supplies on the market.
This is a
and there is
confession
some
that the
risk
entire
there.
system is breaking.
Spend a little more on a
And
better
at the center
PSU,
of this chaos
and you're in the
sits one
$1,050
institution that everyone
to
knows,
$1,100
but nobody truly
range.
understands.
At that price,
JP
with a dedicated
Morgan Chase,
RX 7600
America's
or
largest
better
bank,
GPU,
and they're sitting
your
on
gaming
the largest
performance will be ahead
stockpile
of
of
the Steam
physical
machine
silver
in
in
most
human
scenarios.
history.
That
On
is the
December
reality.
26th, 2025,
What you do not get from a
while most of
DIY
America
build
was
is the
celebrating
form factor.
Christmas with their
You're
families,
not getting a
the New York
6-inch
Federal
cube
Reserve
with a built-in
quietly injected
PSU that
$17
sits
billion
silently under your
into an
TV.
unnamed bank.
You're not getting
No
that
press
level
release,
of acoustic
no
performance.
explanation. Just
Gamers
$17
Nexus
billion of
specifically tested the
emergency
Steam
cash
machine in
flowing
their
into the financial
hemi-anechoic
system
chamber
while you were
for
opening
frequency
presents.
spectrum analysis.
3 days
And
later,
the noise
on
profile
January
is
1st,
impressively
2026,
quiet for what it does.
something happened
that
that
is
had
generally
never
hard
occurred
to
in modern
replicate in a
financial
DIY
history.
build at the same price.
In Japan,
The Verge in
physical
their
silver
review
was selling
said it
for
is the best attempt they have seen at a
$130 per ounce.
PC that
In the
actually
United
fits
Arab
into a living
Emirates,
room,
the same story.
that they honestly could not build
$130.
it from parts.
But here's where it gets
Valve's
disturbing.
bet is that
At
you
that
literally
exact same
cannot
moment,
DIY
if
the
you
form
looked at your
factor.
trading screen
And that
in
is a
New
valid
York or
point.
London,
If you want a
silver
tower
was
that sits on
showing
your desk, the
$72 per
DIY
ounce.
argument wins
Let me
clearly.
repeat that because it
If you
sounds
want something
impossible.
that lives
The
silently in
same
your
metal at the
entertainment
same
center
time,
next to your
trading
TV,
at an 80%
disappears into the
premium
setup,
in one part of the
the
world
Steam machine
versus
is doing
another.
something
This isn't a
genuinely
normal
difficult
market
at this price
discrepancy.
point.
This
Now
is a
about the RAM
confession that the
situation,
entire system
because
is
Valve
breaking.
has been
And
transparent
at the center
about
of this
and I think it
chaos
deserves
sits
proper
one
explanation.
institution that everyone
The
knows,
original target
but
price
nobody
for
truly
the
understands.
Steam machine was around
JP Morgan
$700 to
Chase,
$750,
America's largest
based
bank,
on the hints
and they're
Valve
sitting on
has
the
dropped
largest
in various
stockpile of
interviews.
physical silver
They
in
have said
human
publicly
history.
that they
On
found they
December
could not
26,
source some components at
2025,
any
while
price.
most of America was celebrating
RAM
Christmas
prices
with
and
their
SSD
families,
prices
the New York
climbed
Federal
hard after
Reserve
the November
quietly injected $17
2025
billion
reveal of the
into
product,
an unnamed
driven
bank.
by AI
No
companies
press
consuming
release,
enormous
no
amounts of
explanation.
RAM capacity.
Just $17
Valve
billion
confirmed they
of
cannot
emergency
lock in
cash
bulk
flowing
pricing
into the
contracts
financial
because
system
RAM
while you were
suppliers
opening
do not
presents.
need to negotiate.
3
They will
days
sell
later,
to AI
on
companies
January 1st,
regardless.
2026,
This is not a Valve
something
specific
happened
problem.
that had never
This is a
occurred in
market-wide
modern
problem.
financial history.
The same situation
In
pushed
Japan,
Valve to raise Steam
physical
Deck
silver
prices
was
by more
selling
than
for
40% earlier in
$130 per
2026.
ounce. In the
So the
United
Steam
Arab
machine
Emirates,
landing
the same
above
story,
initial estimates fits a very
$130.
consistent pattern.
But here's where it gets
Does
disturbing.
that make the price
At
comfortable
that
to pay?
exact same
No.
moment,
But
if you
it
looked
does
at your
mean the
trading screen in New
$1,049
York or
sticker
London,
mostly
silver
reflects
was showing
2026
$72
hardware
per ounce.
costs rather
Let me
than a
repeat
permanent
that
aggressive
because it
valve
sounds
margin.
impossible.
If the
The
component
same metal
market
at the same
normalizes
time,
over the next
trading
year
at
or
an
two,
80%
there's
premium
reason
in
to
one
expect
part of the
pricing
world
could
versus
improve
another.
on
This
future
isn't a
revisions
normal
or
market
refresh models.
discrepancy.
Let us
This
also
is a
talk about
confession that the
SteamOS
entire
itself,
system is
because
breaking.
this is where
And
the
at the
Steam
center of this
machine
chaos
experience
sits
genuinely
one
differentiates
institution that
itself
everyone
from a
knows,
random mini
but
PC
nobody
running
truly
Windows.
understands.
SteamOS
JP
is
Morgan
built for this
Chase,
use case in a way
America's
that
largest
Windows is
bank,
not.
and they're
Boot
sitting
time
on
is
the
fast,
largest
the
stockpile
interface
of
is
physical
clean,
silver in human
controller
history.
support is
On
seamless,
December 26,
games launch, and you are
2025,
in
while
them.
most of America was
There's no
celebrating
antivirus
Christmas with
popping
their
up.
families,
There's
the
no
New York
Windows
Federal
update
Reserve
demanding a
quietly
restart.
injected $17
There's no
billion
background
into
telemetry
an unnamed
service
bank.
eating your RAM.
No press release,
Updates happen in
no
the background
explanation.
and apply
Just
on the next
$17
reboot
billion
like a console.
of emergency
For the
cash
living room
flowing
use
into the
case, this
financial
matters
system
more
while
than
you were
benchmark
opening
numbers
presents.
suggest. The
3 days
compatibility
later,
picture
on
through
January
Proton is
1st,
also better than many
2026,
people expect.
something happened
Thousands
that
of
had
Steam
never
games
occurred in
work through
modern
Proton.
financial history.
Red Dead Redemption 2,
In Japan,
Cyberpunk
physical
2077,
silver was selling
Elden
for
Ring, God of War,
$130 per ounce.
Baldur's
In the
Gate.
United Arab Emirates, the same story.
3. Most of what most people
$130.
play is either
But here's where
natively
it gets
compatible with
disturbing.
SteamOS
At that
or
exact
runs through
same
Proton
moment,
without
if you
you
looked at
needing
your
to
trading
configure
screen
anything.
in New York or
The Steam
London,
machine will even run your
silver was
emulators.
showing
EmuDeck is
$17 per
supported.
ounce.
The Heroic
Let me
Games
repeat that
Launcher
because
lets
it
you
sounds
add
impossible.
Epic Games and GOG
The same
titles.
metal at the same
And
time.
Valve explicitly
trading
does
at an
not
80%
care if you
premium
install
in
your
one
own
part of the
software.
world versus
This is a
another.
real
This isn't
PC.
a normal
You can
market
treat it like one.
discrepancy.
Where things get complicated is anti-cheat. Valorant does not work. Some Call of Duty modes do not work. Some EA multiplayer titles do not work. If those are your primary games, the Steam machine is not for you. That is a real limitation, and it is not going away in the short term without those game developers specifically enabling Linux support for their anti-cheat systems. There are some real bugs at launch too. One reviewer noted that 007 First Light defaulted to the native resolution of the Steam Deck when launched on the Steam machine, which produced a noticeably worse image than the hardware is capable of. Valve acknowledged this is a byproduct of the machine still being in what they describe as Steam Deck mode for some titles, and that this will be addressed as new SDKs are released by developers. Valve also shipped multiple patches during the review period addressing VRAM optimization and ray tracing performance. So this is a device that will improve meaningfully through software updates, like the Steam Deck did, and some of the rough edges you are seeing in launch coverage will not be there in 6 months. So what is the bottom line? What should you actually do? If you have around $1,049 to $1,128, and you want a living room gaming PC that is dead simple to use, whisper quiet, genuinely beautiful to look at, takes up almost no space, and gives you access to your existing Steam library with controller support from day one, the Steam machine is a genuinely compelling option for you. The design is excellent. The SteamOS experience is polished. It will get better over time through updates. The form factor is unique and genuinely hard to replicate at this price. And for the majority of your Steam library in the 1080p and 1440p range, it performs well. If you primarily want maximum gaming performance for your money, a DIY build beats it. Spending $150 to $150 on parts gets you better frame rates in most GPU-bound titles. You lose the form factor and the silence, but you gain significantly more GPU headroom. That trade-off is real, and for performance-first buyers, it is the smarter move. If you are a PS5 or Xbox Series X owner wondering if you should switch, the answer is probably not right now at this price. The PS5 Pro offers better GPU performance in most games at $689, and it comes with a controller and 2 terabytes of storage. The base PS5 at $599 still trades blows with the Steam Machine in GPU performance and costs $450 less. The Steam Machine's advantages over consoles are the open platform, the PC game library, the flexibility, the freedom to install whatever you want, and the fact that there are no paywalls to play online. Those are real advantages, but they come at a real price premium. If you are on the fence, waiting is actually a completely reasonable choice. Valve has said the reservation queue runs through the rest of 2026, so availability is going to be limited anyway. FSR 4.1 is coming, SDK updates are coming that will fix some of the launch bugs. The device will be better in 6 months than it is right now. Waiting for the component market to potentially ease, or for a refreshed model with improved specs, is a legitimate option. The Steam Machine is a small triumph of engineering wrapped in very unlucky timing. The hardware inside is a genuinely impressive achievement for the size and thermal constraints. The SteamOS experience is the best it has ever been. The form factor is doing something competitors are not doing. And Valve has a long track record with the Steam Deck of supporting hardware well over time with software improvements. But the price is the price, and in 2026, that price is hard. Not because Valve is being greedy, but because the market they had to build this in is brutal. If the price fits your situation and the use case fits your living room, this is worth serious consideration. If the price stings, or if raw performance is what you're chasing, there are better ways to spend that money right now. That is the honest truth about the Steam Machine price and performance in 2026. If this helped you figure out where you actually stand on this thing, hit the like button, because it genuinely helps the channel get this kind of content in front of more people. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Are you getting one, waiting, or going the DIY route? I want to know what you're thinking. Subscribe if you want more real breakdowns like this without the hype. See you in the next one. Actually, before I close this out, I want to go a bit deeper on a few things, because I think there are aspects of the Steam Machine story that are getting overlooked in most of the coverage, and they genuinely matter for how you think about this purchase decision. Let me start with the thermals and noise, because this came up in the Gamers Nexus deep dive, and I think it gets lost in the headline performance numbers. They did proper acoustic chamber testing on the Steam Machine, and the noise profile is genuinely impressive. For a system running at 170 to 180 watts during heavy gaming loads inside a 6-inch cube with no external PSU, the acoustic performance is better than you would expect. This is not a silent machine at full load, no honest small form factor system is, but it is quiet enough for a living room environment where you have a TV on. The thermal performance was also better than they expected given the closed front plate design. They found that with some airflow modifications, they could improve CPU clock boosting by dropping temperatures a few degrees, but even stocked the thermals are not causing throttling in normal gaming scenarios. The CPU is power limited by design, not thermally throttled. That is an important distinction. Now, I want to talk about the software experience in more detail because, honestly, if you only look at the benchmark numbers, you miss a significant part of what makes this thing compelling or not compelling, depending on your situation. The first time you boot the Steam Machine, you are in SteamOS immediately. There's no out-of-box setup experience that takes 45 minutes like Windows has. There is no manufacturer software to install. There is no trial antivirus to uninstall. You log into your Steam account, and your library is right there. Every game you have ever bought on Steam is available to download. For someone who has been a PC gamer for years and has a large Steam library, this is a legitimately great experience. All those hundreds of games immediately accessible from your couch, with a controller on your TV. For that specific person in that specific situation, the Steam Machine is genuinely exciting. The controller experience is also something that reviewers have been consistently positive about. Steam controller support on SteamOS is obviously excellent, given that Valve made both. But third-party controllers also work well. DualSense works, Xbox controllers work, and the Steam Deck inherited interface handles all of this seamlessly. Navigating menus, adjusting settings, switching between games, it all works cleanly with a controller in a way that managing a regular Windows desktop does not. The SteamOS update system is also worth mentioning because it is genuinely better than Windows for a gaming-focused device. Updates download and apply in the background and are ready on the next reboot. You're not sitting at a black screen watching Windows update progress bars at 10% for 20 minutes. You just boot up and play. Valve has been doing this with the Steam Deck for years and it works well. One thing I want to address directly, because it has been a big part of the conversation this week, is whether the Steam Machine is dead on arrival. You have seen that phrase in a lot of comment sections and in some coverage. And I do not think that is the right read, even if I understand why people are saying it. The original 2015 Steam machines genuinely were close to dead on arrival. They launched without Proton. That meant only games that had been natively ported to Linux worked on them, which was a small fraction of the Steam library. The value proposition was fundamentally broken from day one. You could buy a Steam machine in 2015 and most of your library would not run on it. That is completely different from 2026. Proton has been in development for years. It is mature. The compatibility database is enormous. Most Steam games work through Proton. This is not a theoretical future capability. It is what millions of Steam Deck owners have been using for the past 3+ years. The 2026 Steam machine inherits all of that work. The software foundation is solid in a way it absolutely was not in 2015. So the performance per dollar criticism is valid. The timing with the memory crisis is genuinely unfortunate. But dead on arrival is wrong. This is a product with real appeal for a specific type of buyer. It just costs more than that buyer would like right now. Let me also address something about Valve's approach to this launch that I think deserves more credit than it is getting. Valve did not subsidize this hardware. They were explicit about this. Pierre-Loup Griffet said directly that their goal is not to sell hardware below cost. Unlike traditional console makers like Sony and Microsoft, who historically took a loss on console hardware and made it back through software and subscription revenue, Valve is not doing that here. And one of the reasons they cannot do it the way Sony and Microsoft do is that there is no guarantee you spend money in the Steam ecosystem if you own a Steam machine. You can emulate games on it, you can install games from other sources, you can play your existing library without buying another game. There is no subscription required to play online. The ecosystem is open in a way that console ecosystems are not. Taking a hardware loss in a truly open ecosystem is a different and much riskier bet than taking a loss on a locked console where you recoup it through forced subscription and platform-exclusive software fees. Whether you agree with that approach or not, it is intellectually honest. And it means the $1,049 is not padded with artificial margins. It reflects what it actually costs Valve to build and sell this machine in 2026's component market. Now, something that has not gotten enough attention in this coverage cycle is what happens to the Steam machine over time. The Steam Deck launched and then improved dramatically through software updates over its first 18 months. Performance improved, compatibility improved, battery life improved through efficiency updates. Games that did not work at launch later worked. It is a meaningful consideration for whether you buy at launch or wait for the first wave of buyers to report back on real-world performance and give Valve time to address the issues that only show up at scale. And honestly, the real story of the week might not even be the hardware reviews. It might be the implications of SteamOS 3.8 being officially supported on desktop hardware. Because that means anyone with a compatible PC can run the Steam Machine software experience without buying the Steam Machine. If you have an AMD GPU Ryzen system sitting at home, you can install SteamOS, plug into your TV, and have the same interface, the same game library access, the same controller experience, for free. That is a massive expansion of what SteamOS represents as a platform, and it is happening alongside the Steam Machine launch, not after it. Valve wins whether you buy the Steam Machine or you build your own Steam Machine or you install SteamOS on an existing PC. In every scenario, you are in the Steam ecosystem. In every scenario, you are more likely to buy games on Steam. That alignment of business interest and consumer benefit is genuinely interesting, and it is why I think SteamOS as a platform has a different future than most people expected, even a year ago. The bottom line has not changed from what I said earlier. The Steam Machine is a genuinely impressive piece of engineering in a brutally bad component market. The performance is real and documented, and it sits at a level that handles the majority of most people's game libraries well at 1080p and 1440p. The 4K claims are overstated for demanding modern titles. The price is high, and the comparisons to PS5 and GPU-bound scenarios are unflattering. A DIY build beats it on performance per dollar, but cannot match the form factor. If you are the right buyer for this product, you probably already know it. If you have been waiting for a living room PC that actually feels like a console to use, that is quiet and small and just works with your Steam library from your couch, the Steam Machine delivers that experience in 2026 in a way nothing else quite does. The price is the thing that determines whether it is the right choice for you right now, or whether you wait for better component pricing or go DIY. That is everything. Honestly, one of the most interesting product launches I have covered in a while, and I am genuinely curious to see where this goes over the next year. Thanks for watching. Leave a like if this helped you understand the situation better, and I will see you in the next video.